What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the extended cut, minimally edited podcast version of this week's episode, where we're going to tackle all those little things that come up in our therapist brains when we're off hours. Therapist brain has a way of popping up completely unannounced at any point, at the strangest points. And I used to think that this was problematic and intrusive because I'm off the clock, I signed off, I'm home from work, and I should not be thinking about my clients or myself as therapists or, that note that I didn't get to yet, saved it for tomorrow. I used to think that if my therapist brain was still operating, I was still thinking about work stuff when I wasn't at work, that there was something about me that I had poor boundaries or, that I hadn't kind of figured out how to turn off that part of my brain. And I think it is more nuanced than this. So in this episode, I thought we would talk about some of the more common types of experiences of therapist brain popping up when you're not at work. We're going to embrace the positive things that come with it and also tackle some of the challenging things that can come with it and offer some tips to help you navigate this if this is feeling more problematic for you. Now, of course, all of us need to be able to, at times, turn off our therapist brain and just be ourselves because we need rest. We need a sense of who we are and our identity outside of the work that we do, outside of our care for our clients and their needs. But sometimes we just go to, turn off the lights on our therapist brain and it just keeps knocking at our door. So yeah, I've been there before. I think we've all been there before. I mentioned that I sort of used to judge myself for thinking about my clients and my work between sessions, and I've since reframed it to see it as I care. I care about my clients. I care about delivering effective care for my clients, and I care about being generally a responsible clinician, a responsible therapist. Those are all good things to care about, in my opinion. But it's also really important to care for ourselves and make sure our care for our work is in balance with everything else that's important to us. I think most of us have been there before, if not many times, where we know we've clocked off for the day, we can take our therapist hat off and unwind. Nonetheless, our brain just keeps serving us a highlight reel of every awkward silent, every missed intervention, and any other misses that we might have made throughout the day. Now, like I said before, having these thoughts pop in your mind doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It means you care. But it is also really helpful to draw a distinction between second-guessing ourselves and self-reflection. Of course, it's incredibly important that we make space to self-reflect on our work. How effective are we as therapists, honing in on our craft? And at the same time, it's so important that we set some boundaries so we don't just spend our days second-guessing ourselves. For today's episode, I'm going to focus in a little bit more on those thoughts that sound a little more anxious, intrusive, challenging. But I also want to acknowledge that so many of the thoughts that fill my mind and so many of our minds between sessions is those caring, loving thoughts towards our clients. We'll be checking our calendar for the day, notice the date, and remember that our client said that they had a really big talk that day, and we'll send out kind thoughts for them and wish them well. Or we'll remember a highlight from a recent session with a client where they stepped into something really challenging in order to overcome a big fear of theirs and feel a sense of pride, just kind of remembering how much work they did and how successful they were. So here are some examples of some of those not as desirable, unwanted thoughts that can pop up between sessions. The one I personally have most often sounds something like, did I say the wrong thing? Was that the right intervention for that client? Basically, I'll second guess if something I said or did was most effective for a client or even effective at all to begin with. And again, something to be said about any of these thoughts is that it is a good idea to be self-reflective about all of these, but we also don't want to be second-guessing ourselves so much that now it's intruding on the rest of our lives. So earlier in the profession, I would have this thought of did I say the wrong thing, or was that really the best intervention to do with that client? And then I would be so hard on myself thinking I should know better. Now in retrospect, I realize I should have done this or that, I should have said this or that in that moment, I would just be hard on myself about it and feel like I should have known, I should have done better than I did in that moment. And now my thoughts around this have shifted because certainly most of the time in anything in life, if we look back at any scenario in hindsight, we can almost always go back and say, oh yeah, you know what? I probably could have handled that better. I could have handled the tantrum my child went through a little bit better than I did in that moment, or that conflict with my spouse, or the way I cut that person off in traffic, that wasn't the best, right? We can always go back with our future brain and look back at a moment and go, oh, you know what? Yeah, I could have definitely dealt with that better. And that is a wonderful part of our humanity, that we can be self-reflective and most of the time kind of fine tune and improve on whatever approaches we were using by default or even to the best of our abilities in the moment. And then we can take those learnings and apply some of them next time and just keep learning, keep fine tuning. That is what it is to be human, which yay, otherwise we'd be stuck doing the same stuff over and over again. In which case, what are we even doing here as therapists? So now instead, when I have this thought pop up of like, ooh, I could have said that a little bit differently to be more helpful, or I could have done a different intervention that might have been more effective. One, I'll check in and say, okay, well, is this something I can just bring in next time to my session with this client, or next time this comes up with a client that, I might like to do it differently going forward, and in which case, great. The self-reflective mechanism was successful. Or sometimes it is necessary to kind of check in to see like, oh, was that such a big miss that maybe there needs to be a bit of a repair? Most of the time in these situations, the answer is like, probably not. Probably your client didn't even notice anything weird, or they might have thought like, oh, whatever. Yeah, that was a moment that was a little awkward and we moved on and it was fine. But, every now and then there is going to be a scenario where it is worth considering like, ooh, did I miss it enough that I need to do a repair there? In which case you can think about that and think like, okay, what kind of repair might be helpful in this situation? And not beat ourselves up about it, but just embrace that repair work is a very essential element of therapy, of being a human, and therapists and their clients have a human relationship together. So we are also going to be doing repair work together with our clients, especially if you're meeting with someone longer term. Like, it's gonna happen. And of course, as is true with anything ever, if you're unsure, this is a great opportunity to check in with a consult group. Like, if you keep second guessing yourself about the same thing over and over again, or maybe you self-reflected and thought, okay, next time I'm gonna do that differently, and then next time comes around, but then you made the same error again and it kind of keeps repeating. Those are good opportunities to bring that up in a place like consult group, supervision, any spaces that you have where you can kind of consult and address concerns, kind of check in with folks and get feedback. But I know sometimes, even after we do some appropriate amount of self-reflection, where we might say, oh, I have a little takeaway for next time, or oh, maybe I do even have a bit of repair that might be a good idea to do with that client, that thought still doesn't go to bed. Like, it's still keeping us awake at night or making it difficult to be in the present moment with the rest of our lives. I used to have this happen a lot more, and one tool that I found useful was to keep a running list of those things. I know this is it's like a transitional process for anxiety where if you're feeling overly anxious about a thought, that's something that you can't address until a later date, like maybe the next time you're in consult group or the next time you're in session with that client, you can kind of try that other intervention next time or whatever it might be. I'll just write it down on a list and say, listen, I don't need to keep rethinking about this because thinking about it more isn't going to change or provide new thoughts. I already thought it through, but I'll put it on this list and I'm going to bring this list with me to my consult group or to my supervision or to my next work day and just remind myself what's on the list so that, I remember to follow up on it. But I don't need to think about anything on this list in the meantime. I can just remind myself that I wrote it down. That tool is not going to be helpful to everybody, but definitely more useful for those of us who can kind of lean anxious with our sort of ruminating, second-guessing thoughts. Another thought that I find quite intrusive from time to time is the question of could I have caught something sooner than I did? Could I have caught that diagnosis sooner than I did? Or thought to ask a very important assessment question that gave us valuable information, you're working with something for a while and then somehow it pops up that substance use is this huge thing that you didn't even see but has very much been center stage this whole time and you missed it. And a couple of assessment questions could have maybe gotten you there pretty quickly, but you just didn't think to ask. Like that would be an example in this category where I'd go like, oh my gosh, Marie, like how did I not think to catch that sooner? That was right there. And I can be really hard on myself about that. I still can. That one gets me that one's like a kryptonite for me, where it still messes me a little longer than I think is helpful. And that one can especially start to spiral if we think like, oh, a better therapist would have caught that sooner, or like, we can start to turn into narratives of like, I'm not doing a great job as a therapist because I missed these things, that sort of thing. And when that happens, I just try my best to practice some radical acceptance. Thank you, DBT, or however you want to frame it. If you're not familiar with radical acceptance, it's kind of the idea that exists in the Serenity Prayer. And if you're not familiar with the Serenity Prayer, this is how it goes. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So basically, if there's something that needs action, let's have the courage to take that action. And if there's something that we can't change, let's have the ability to accept that there's nothing we can do, and the wisdom to kind of know when something is an action item versus an item that we just have to accept that we can't change. For me, the Serenity Prayer is really helpful because I do a genuine check-in and think like, is this something I can change now? Like if I missed that substance use diagnosis along the way, but we're here now and I can't push rewind. Like, no, I can't change that. I can't catch it sooner. I can change now my interventions to be more appropriate, or if you need to make referrals or whatever future-oriented actions, but I can't go back and know that sooner. So then I'll just go, you know what, Marie? There ain't nothing you can do about this. Sorry, lady. And then I just feel frustrated for a second, and I feel like I'm sitting on my hands, and I get mad for a little bit, and then I go, ugh, okay, fine. And somehow that helps me move on. If I need to, I can always double check, phone a friend, ask in consult group, and then almost always consult group is going to be like, hey, it happens to all of us. It's okay. And yeah, if there's something where it's like, ooh, that's something that like is important to maybe assess for sooner, then great, have that conversation, integrate that into your, assessment materials or whatever the thing is that needs adjusting going forward, and great. Be grateful that you learned something new and bring it with you. And we all have new things to learn. That's just so human, so regular, so normal. So it's fine. And before I continue this conversation, I'd like to thank Powbox for sponsoring today's episode. Based on a poll that I put out last year, only 1/4 of therapists are confident that the email they're using is HIPAA secure. That means that 3 out of 4 therapists listening to this ad right now either aren't using HIPAA secure email or aren't sure if it's HIPAA secure. In 2023, I made the switch to Powbox, and it's been smooth sailing since. Powbox is the simplest, most effective solution for mental health professionals to seamlessly integrate HIPAA security into our email, all while using our favorite email provider. It's just running smoothly and quietly in the background, keeping any potential space invaders from interfering with your emails. If you'd like to check out Powbox for yourself, they're offering Private Practice Skills listeners a special discount. Just use coupon code SKILLS at checkout to get $250 off your first year with Powbox. Thank you again to Powbox for sponsoring this episode, and now back to our conversation. Another version of this that feels quite similar in its underlying dynamics, and that like we can't go back to change anything now, is when a client leaves therapy rather abruptly or, sooner than we'd kind of talked about or anticipated. Then we can start to question, like, was there something that I did, something that I missed? Am I a bad therapist because so-and-so ended after 3 sessions and we were just getting started, What did I miss there? And of course, again, if there is some sort of repair that you're aware of that needs to happen, by all means, you can self-reflect on that. But yeah, I used to get a lot more hung up on this, both when, I was more like mentally fragile, I'd say, mentally. Like I needed to feel like I was a good therapist because I was insecure and I was fearful that I was a bad therapist. And now I'm like, you know what? I think I'm an okay enough therapist. Am I the best therapist? No. Am I a pretty darn good therapist that helps a lot of people? Yes. Do I make mistakes because I'm a person? Yes. And are there people who are more expert in a lot of therapist-y things than I am? Yeah. So like all of those things are true and I'm okay. So like that mental fragility around my career identity is not so unstable. But there was also the variable of like being early in my career in private practice. And when a client dropped off, I felt it in my pocketbook. Nobody says pocketbook. Is that a British thing or an old school thing? Anyway, I needed money. So that also was an added variable, but then I would judge myself for feeling like I was prioritizing the money over the client. And now I thought I would care about the money more than the client when maybe it was best for them to leave. And you could see how these thoughts could spiral, and I certainly have experienced that in the past. And if we're talking about different ways that intrusive thoughts can pop up at any moment and invade your brain, like they can come in any form, any flavor, and kick into gear. It could be things that are related to like, I think I did something incorrect in session, I talked too much, I missed something, that client doesn't like me. It could be identity related things like career identity, like I'm not a great therapist, or something we talked about in last week's episode was, I'm not doing well myself, and who am I to help these people that I'm working with get better? Like when I can't get better, that can take over. It could be like character related things, like, if an employer, supervisor, professor, whatever gave you feedback at some point that's stuck to you, and now you're questioning like, am I built to be a therapist? Is this profession even for me? And then you can point to these different things that happen in session as like evidence in your mind that, maybe you shouldn't be a therapist, or you have some character flaws, which has also the potential to spiral if left unchecked. Or it could manifest as worrying about our clients. Like, okay, I hope my clients are doing okay. And again, this all stems from us caring. We care about our clients. We care about providing excellent care. And also our clients a lot of times are really going through it. This partly inspired this episode because this one is one I'm feeling right now. I won't share the details to protect client confidentiality, but like there's some things going on politically that make me feel worried for clients of mine. Like, I hope they're okay. I hope they're okay, and I am worried for them. And that worry could be a genuine human connection, a human response to say, when we care about somebody and they're going through something hard, we worry about them. That is one manifestation of care. Now, worry, if left unchecked, has the potential to turn into something that's unproductive or counterproductive, but the presence of the worry itself could just be a signal that you care. It could be a sign that somebody is going through something that is worrisome. And so it could just be a reflection of a genuine relationship that we share with our clients. I mean, I won't name what's happening for my clients right now, but like I'll worry for my clients, for example, if we talked about them planning to come out to a loved one who is homophobic or transphobic, and I'll be like, oh my goodness, I hope they do okay. I mean, they'll do okay, but like, how is their loved one going to react? I think we can already kind of anticipate it might be a big challenge. It might not go well. And I already told, I'll reassure myself, right? I already told them they can reach out to me if they need anything. They have these hotlines if it's after hours, like da-da-da-da. Okay, there's nothing else to do but buckle up and be like, I hope they're okay. And yeah, I'm going to worry about them until I hear from them next time. And, that's humanity. If you're prone to worrying about your clients, like I am sometimes, then it's helpful on a practical level to just kind of check in to say, okay, well, the thing that I'm worried about, while I have therapist hat on, what are the things that are reasonable, appropriate, and expected for somebody in my role as therapist to do for this client? So, for me, in some cases, it's things like, did I make sure that this client has access to whatever resources or resourcing they might need to have in their tool belt in order to be equipped to enter into, whatever it is that you're worried about for them. Things of that nature that live in like things therapist does with a client to help equip them for hard things. And if there's anything that you're worried about that lives outside of therapist hat, like if you're worried about them and so you want to call them to make sure they're okay so that you can feel reassured, then those are things that we might just need to find our own resourcing to cope with. And if you're having trouble coping with that, that is a great time to reach out, not to your client, but to reach out to colleagues, professionals, therapists, to support you, to make sure that you can tend to your own concerns and needs. The fact that those concerns and needs, those urges are there is totally fine. There have been times where I've checked in consult group and been like, should I email this client? Should I call this client? Because is this just my worry getting amped up too loud, or is this a thing that I should reach out because I'm worried about them? So it's okay to have those feelings. That's totally normal and human. I've said that line so many times in this episode. Maybe that's what I should title the episode. It's normal and human to think about client stuff between sessions. Of course, it's also possible to have intrusive thoughts about things not quite related to our client work, like what if I get subpoenaed, like just general fears. What if I get sued by a client someday, maybe? What if, scary things happen to our clients that we hope never happen, but we know can? So those are all worry related. It could be like, I'm so behind on my notes, and is someone going to come for me and take my license? Or I don't know. It's like, this is a genuine fear I had. I can't explain it. But when I first got my license, I'm looking here because my license is up on the wall. When I first got my paper license, and I was like, the California Board of Psychology is going to call me immediately and ask me to send it back because they're going to find some loophole, some technicality, and they'll be like, just kidding, you got to start grad school all over again because all of this is null. For a year after I got licensed in 2014, I was like, my license is just at any point just going to be taken away by the Board of Psychology. And mind you, I did nothing shady. I made sure everything was up to snuff. I cut no corners. So it's not like I'm feeling a genuine, fear or remorse about doing something shady. That is the opposite of that. Cross my T's, dot my I's, everything. Still thought they were going to take my license. So, there's stuff we can freak out about that has nothing to do with client care. Clearly, I've shared before, and if you haven't watched any of my prior episodes, it's apparent just in what I've shared today that I can be prone to anxiety, and here it is. This is what it looks like. I'm happy to share that I still have my license 11 years later. No one took it from me, so yay, there's that. Now that I've spent all this time talking about these sort of unwanted, intrusive thoughts that can come up about our profession or client work and that sort of thing, I want to acknowledge too that I often, and I think most of my therapist friends that I talk to have the same experience, we often think about our clients in kind, caring ways. I'm at the store and I remember that my client said that such and such is their favorite snack, and I just happen to be walking by that area in the store and I see their favorite snack sitting on the shelf, and I'll be like, in my head, silently, that's so-and-so's favorite snack. I wonder how they're doing today. Oh, there's that book. Oh yeah, client so-and-so told me they just read that book and they thought it was awesome. Let me read the back cover. These ways that our client interactions influence us. And I'll say I have learned so much because I will see my clients go through things and do it well, do it with grace, or even just have knowledge in areas that I have less knowledge about. And I'll be inspired by them to say, oh my gosh, this client knows so much about a topic and a lived experience, or maybe they are living through a lived experience that I'm so inspired by them. Now I'm going to go learn about it. Or maybe I'm going to put myself in situations that challenge me in ways that I see my clients being willing to challenge themselves. This is a lighthearted one, but seeing clients being so willing to take on an athletic challenge that maybe historically I'd be like, I can't do that. And I'd be like, you know what, my client is dealing with this, that, and the other thing, and they're still going through that athletic challenge. Maybe I can do it, right? And drawing inspiration mentally, secretly, privately, because we're protecting their confidentiality, but having these little moments where, of course, we're influenced by our clients if we genuinely care about them. And of course, we know how valuable it is to have a genuine connection with our therapy clients and how successful their treatments are. So we have to assume that then we would be affected by someone that we genuinely care about. So you have permission to be affected by your clients if you didn't know that. And it's just, if you're concerned, then just reflect on do things stay within a healthy container where my actions aren't somehow potentially negatively impacting my clients or my work in general, or my ability to maintain my own health, or my ability to keep the things that are a priority in my life a priority. And everything kind of stays contained as like, yeah, I'm a therapist. Of course I think about my clients between sessions. And yeah, sometimes I might wake up at 2 a.m. and remember that I forgot to, send out that bill that I was supposed to send out. And darn, I'm going to do it tomorrow. That's totally normal. It's fine. We're all human. That should be like a tagline somewhere. How often do I say that's normal? We're human. I just wanted to talk about this today because this is in that category of like stuff people don't always talk about in our profession, but definitely happens. And then they end up getting only talked about in these sort of like hush, hush, quiet, trusted corners, or not talked about at all. Now, if you're going through it and you're having overly intrusive thoughts that are causing more disruption, I do encourage you to get some support. Know that if you share this with other folks, they will most likely be like, oh my gosh, I totally understand, or I could easily imagine how that could happen, rather than judging you for it. And if people are judging you for it, first of all, I'm sorry. That's not nice. And know that just might mean that those are not quite the correct people to turn to for support. There are other people who will be able to support you. Well, I'm sure I didn't cover all of the types of thoughts that can pop up between sessions. If there are any tools you found helpful to help you feel like you can tend to those thoughts, but also let them go when it's appropriate to, feel free to leave those tips in the comments below so others can glean from your experience as well. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.